Hello and welcome to Net That Haul. It's FPLNima. I'm back co-hosting today with our good friend super hauler Kieran at FPL_Discomfort. It's our first one together, Kieran. I'm really looking forward to reviewing kind of, I guess, the Game Week 34 double that's still going on as we speak, and also a quick turnaround to the next double in 35 where we're both going to be on Wildcard. So interested to see how many Sheffield United players you carry through despite their lack of doubles. How are you, my friend? And good to be here with you. And yeah, really nice to have you as a guest.
No, good to be on here finally with you, mate. It's long overdue. Done a couple with Gabe, and yeah, definitely keen to be having this chat with you, particularly as we both have our wild cards in hand right now.
We do indeed. We're also going to try and get out of here, guys, before the matches kick off, so you can watch all the matches. I see a few people in the chat as well. Thank you for tuning in. Combe, good evening. Fingamabob, evening. Claire FPL, lovely to see you, evening. We got BW Splitter saying howdy. How are you, mate? We got Lenses. Hola todos. No, I'm not going to butcher this. Hola todos. I might be very wrong. I'm sure he'll let us know. Good to see you as well, BW and Shaz. Thank you for tuning in live. We appreciate it. So this week, there is sadly no FPL philosophy. We're going to go straight into it. And we're going to start with the summary of the Gameweek 35 NetxG. So if you're listening on podcast, 1 minute 30 in, come to this timestamp and you will see the entire summary of the game week ahead. The first match is on Saturday at 12:30. It's West Ham versus Liverpool. A early kickoff for Liverpool on a Saturday yet again for what I think is the 50th time this season. Despite Klopp's protests to the organisers, they seem to love screwing them over. And I've started to see a trend that they genuinely play way too many 12:30 Saturday games after midweek games and international breaks. It can't be a conspiracy at this stage. I honestly feel like something isn't right here and the TV companies have too much power. Anyway, rant aside, let's go to the matchup. So West Ham versus Liverpool. So West Ham, 1.22 NetxG. And Liverpool, for comparison, 2.13, which is actually the joint second highest NetxG of the game week. So it's a very good matchup. And I assume neither of us are going to have Liverpool players on our wildcard. So how does that make you feel, first of all? Yeah, how do you feel? Like, isn't that a bit scary? Or is it just we shouldn't worry too much and like the doubles are more important? What do you think?
It's scary, isn't it? I think there's narratives that we can choose to believe in games like this, that perhaps West Ham, after getting destroyed in their last game with a week off, will have time and David Moyes in their ear telling them to buck up their ideas. But ultimately, what do West Ham have left to play for this season? Whereas Liverpool are fighting for the title. So yeah, I don't think tonight or anything will change anything for me, but I think this week and next week for Liverpool are definitely weeks I'm worried about what Salah potentially could do. I'm fine to be rid of Darwin though. I'm fine for him to be out of my life.
Oh God, bloody Darwin! I'm seeing everyone's upgrading Darwin, which I saw some stats that he was like the lowest ranked player in Europe for like with his percentage of shots still going in, and the second lowest is Nicholas Jackson, who survived the 10th yellow card yesterday. So yeah, it looks like people are upgrading from the worst finisher in Europe to the second worst finisher in Europe this season. It's a big upgrade, isn't it? But talking about the Liverpool West Ham game, more importantly, jokes aside. So, okay, so obviously tonight hasn't happened yet, so we don't know what's going to happen against Everton. The last time Everton won a Merseyside derby, Mikel Arteta scored as a player, so I have zero hopes of anything happening there. In terms of West Ham, I think for me it's all about like kind of Bowen and his fitness and match fitness, and West Ham really do look like they don't have much else left to play for, right? I almost feel like we talk about teams being on the beach at this time of the season or getting close to it. They seem to be one of those teams, and with Liverpool going for the title, like you said, I do feel quite reluctant to not have Liverpool players. But if I'm going to hold out, I'm going to wait till game week 38, and I'll try to maybe bring one in then as a final punt. You obviously have a free hit, right, Kieran? So for the listeners, our wildcards might have slightly different strategies because you can free hit into 38 and get those kind of Arsenal and Liverpool players and see who's got things to play for and, you know, really clean up potentially. I know you did it last season. So can you tell us a little bit about it?
Yeah, no, I'll be honest with you. A lot for me doing free hit 38 is just the fact that you get to enjoy the last game of the season where you have all of the teams playing at the same time. You have pretty much everyone interested in every team. So things like FPL Meet is a great opportunity for everyone else to be getting team news for you, and you to be able to go really, really differential, because you don't know what stage of the season we're in. I hope that the title race is still alive. I hope the relegation race is still alive, but we could find ourselves in similar situations to prior years where titles sewn up, and maybe that offers you the opportunity to go differential with a City player that typically no one else would have. But yeah, I'd agree with you on this game. I think looking at those zonal matchups, it's interesting that the right doesn't light up. So I guess I'm feeling a little bit better. Or 3.5 is high, but I guess compared to the
still pretty high. Yeah.
It's comparative to everything else. Yeah, it's high compared to Liverpool. No, so it's almost as if that Diaz or that Darwin are potentially better. But we've seen how misfiring Liverpool have been recently, just with their ability to put the ball in the back of the net until last week, and it was kind of unexpected players getting their goals. Szoboszlai getting his first ever goal for them in the Premier League. It wasn't him actually, was it? Who were their goal scorers on the weekend?
It was what, for Trent, you mean?
Trent, Jota, and who was it Gravenbach who got?
Yeah, it was. Yeah.
Yeah.
I was surprised he started actually, but yeah, no, he did look good. It was a very strange team, wasn't it, in terms of just the mass rotation with lots of key first team players not starting, but it worked.
It worked, and I think that's a key thing for them. I think you look at the Arsenal games, and maybe there was concern about not rotating players for that Wolves game and what that could do. Whereas Klopp had that opportunity. Well, he took the opportunity to rotate and still came away with the 3 points. So I think it's interesting. Like we'll probably see a different Liverpool team tonight, and I know we've probably got the team news out by now. But yeah, I'm just concerned about what West Ham have to play for. So it could be a really good game for Liverpool.
So maybe those who don't have their wild card, right? So I was gonna say, like, people who maybe don't have their wild card, some people, punted on the likes of Jota, or like they maybe have like a second Arsenal mid. Maybe Salah isn't the one they sell this week. Maybe it's someone else they sell. There's other fires to put out, right? Like, we don't know what the Haaland news is. He's obviously ruled out of the game tomorrow against Brighton. It sounds like it's not serious or long term, but still worth keeping an eye on. I think overall, with us both on wildcard, it's hard for me to kind of talk up assets in this fixture, knowing I'm not going to go with any of them. But if there was one I would go for, and I really like the idea of, is Trent. So I do feel that right now I'm kind of focused so much on this bench boost in 37 that I'm spreading the funds. And part of me wonders, like, would I just be better off with Trent than like Spurs defenders and United defenders and Chelsea defenders? He's got that double-digit haul in him in at least 2 or 3 of the next 4 or 5 fixtures, in my opinion. It's a bit pricey, but I think he'd be one player I'd be interested in. He's definitely a lot cheaper than Salah, and I don't plan to captain either of them. So if I had to pick one on the wild card, I think Trent might find a way into my team by the time the deadline comes.
Yeah, no, I think that's fair enough. I think it's a case where I've seen a lot of talk around who can you sell this week if you're trying to get a midfielder in, etc. And for me, it would be, well, at the moment I'm saying Saka before Salah before we get onto the Arsenal game, but that might change when we look at that one.
Yeah, so that's an interesting one, because you're right. I think if I was to sell one, I'm probably going to sell both, but I haven't sold either of them yet because I have the value tied up on the wild card. But I do think they're both going to be gone. I think if I had no wild card, I reckon Saka would be my first one out of the two, if I'm really honest. And that's me saying that despite loving him. But I think, yeah, being honest, I would sell him first before I would sell Salah right now. Let's just kind of talk about the 12:30 game in general, right? Like, we talk about the kind of waking up at 7 a.m. and eating pasta and 5,000 calories before the game at that time of the morning is a bit intense. Is that something that maybe can reassure people like me and you who are unlikely to have Salah in Game Week 35, that hopefully the early morning kickoff might be enough to make him sluggish?
Not really. They're traveling down Friday, aren't they? They're not going to be traveling down to London Saturday morning. So it's that interesting one, right? Where I think realistically, it's more so the turnaround that they have, because they're playing tonight at 8 o'clock kickoff. So you're looking at around 10 o'clock finishing. Do you get a rest day between then and playing? If so, it would be sort of tomorrow, which means you're then looking at training and then jumping on a coach down Friday night.
Same days of training, yeah. Yeah, that's
so
a good point.
So it's more so that, but yeah, look, we saw what Palace did to West Ham. West Ham are just one of those teams where I think you'll have certain players at this stage of the season that will want to continue to play. So someone like a Bowen, he'll want to play every minute and perform every minute because he's trying to get on that plane for England. So you have sort of players in contention for their European teams going for it. But I think the vast majority of players won't have that in mind. So it's really hard to motivate if there's not really much you gain as a player anymore. If you won't get Europe necessarily, it means something to the club, a couple of million more, etc. But that means nothing to a player, the difference between 10th and 8th or whatever it may be.
Yeah, no, that's fair. I think moving on to the next matchup, but just Crystal Palace is what kind of reminded me of it is, I think that speaks volumes, right? This is the Crystal Palace team that do not really score many goals. And I appreciate they had 2 home fixtures. It looks great for the double game week, but to score the number of goals they did, I think is more testament to how bad West Ham are currently than necessarily Crystal Palace's firepower going forwards. And with that in mind, Fulham at home to Crystal Palace is the second game of the game week. So the NetxG for Fulham is 1.75 and for Crystal Palace is 0.97. And don't let tonight, when they play tonight and they randomly get another 5 goals, trick you guys. I'm playing some other formats where you don't get to do all the bench boost and chip strategy. There's just wildcard. And the first players I'm selling are my Crystal Palace midfielders to get to Spurs and Chelsea players this week in those formats where there is no wildcards and stuff like that. So, I'm not going to look too much into Crystal Palace's route of West Ham as like a reason to hold on to them going forwards. I think like if you can bench Mateta for the rest of the season, fair play. But I'll be looking to move on for upside away from Crystal Palace right now. That said, I think Fulham are in a really good place right now. I really like Fulham this season. I think they've shown some great, they've shown a great, representation of themselves. Like they obviously took all those points from us at Arsenal. Could look back and regret those matches against Fulham as what ultimately may have cost us the title, or Villa, one of those 2 teams. But what do you feel this game going? Because obviously the NetxG implies like almost like a 2-1 win to Fulham against Crystal Palace, but it's a London derby. It's like should be quite an exciting match for neutrals. I think I'd actually enjoy watching this game.
It should be, but like I really like Fulham at home. I really like them at home in terms of how good they are as a defense. So at home they've conceded 23 goals before this game week, and the NetxG at home of like 19.7, which considering their position in the table is really strong. And I think it's watching their games, and if you look at the Liverpool game as well, they tend to limit teams to chances that are outside the box and lower XG shots because of how well they defend the area. And they're also really good at defending set pieces. So when you combine those 2 things and you've got someone like Leno, who is a great shot stopper, particularly for shots from range, it really does hamper a team. So I think it's the kind of game where we would see Palace having a lot of the ball, a lot of possession outside the Fulham box. And they'll be trying to use the overlapping runs of Mitchell and Munoz. And they've got the players that can kind of get behind there. But Fulham's defence is pretty strong at home. So it wouldn't surprise me if it's as much as we'd want it to be exciting, it wouldn't surprise me if it was a 2-1 to Fulham or if it was a sort of 1-0, 0-0 type of game either. I think Fulham obviously have Muniz, who's quality up top, and they do have good players out wide, like an Iwobi could do well in a game like this on the transition and trying to get behind the fullbacks, particularly a Mitchell as he pushes up. And I think maybe that's Fulham's chance of success. But it's one that I'm glad it's not on TV, to be honest, and I'm not going to have players from either because, I still like the idea. I think a Palace midfielder, if the midfield options weren't so great, is of interest to me on a wild card, just if you weren't looking to sort of bench boost in 37 as well, because the fixtures are decent till the end of the season. And Elise and Eze are performing well together. So if you've got them, you're playing them in a game like this. But exactly what you were saying, I'd probably expect the scoreline to be more in line with the NetxG than with the West Ham game.
Yeah, no, that's fair. I think what we'll do is we'll focus more on the games where perhaps like people are from teams that are doubling, because obviously there's teams that double twice in Spurs and Chelsea. Then there's other teams like Newcastle, United, City who will double as well just the once. But think we'll focus more of the matchup times on those games specifically. We are starring your questions, guys, in the live chat. So as we go, we will also answer those in the Q&A at the end. And I actually have a draft wildcard team from Kieran, which I'll be showing for like 5 minutes before the Q&A. So we'll talk through whether maybe anything changes between, I guess, the draft you made before we spoke to each other and then having seen the NetxG data and talked through each matchup with each other. I wonder if that has an impact on some of your players in that wildcard. But with this game, I think apart from talking about Eze and Elise as being fantastic, and Leno is still great in goal. You know, he's someone who, if I had him as a goalkeeper and didn't have a wild card, I just roll him out every week till the end of the season. So, yeah, I think there isn't much more to say that personally from assets from these teams that I'm interested in. And big shout out to Evo as well. Evo, hopefully I'm pronouncing that right, who captained Eze this week and has Elise too. So that is awesome. That is such a good shout. And you deserve all those points, buddy. I think a lot of people chickened out of captaining someone outside of Salah or Saka. So fair play for taking that punt. And oh wow, it also had White and Havertz. Damn, man, this is a good week for you. How many points are you on, Ivo? Are you going to potentially break 100 points this week with the rest of the games to go? Hopefully you can, mate. So the next one is Man United
he'll already
versus
be
Burnley.
pretty much there, won't he? If you look at those.
Yeah, I was going to say he's probably already on like 100 already.
It's crazy.
Cool. Yeah. Crazy.
Move on to the next one.
Yeah, Man United versus Burnley. I think this one's a bit more relevant just because even though obviously like they don't double in 35, this is a great fixture for Man United, you would think. And they do then have the double. So how many Man United players do you currently have on your... Actually, let me say the NetxG numbers before I ask you about the assets. So Man United is 1.99 NetxG and Burnley is 1.26. So this is seeing like a 2-1. But yeah, how many United players do you currently have? Because I think I have like 2 in my draft, maybe 3.
Yeah, at the moment I'm on 2, with Bruno being one of them that I think's in a lot of people's drafts or one of their drafts there. Purely because it's Bruno who started to look good again. I really don't want to go with defender because I was worried about seeing things like this where they're playing a team like Burnley at home and are still expected to concede over a goal on average in this fixture. And I think it's telling. I think, what was it? They've conceded like over 100 shots in their last 6 games or something crazy, Man United, which is just, they might be low XG shots, but if you concede 100 of them, you're going to be letting in goals, and they are. So, yeah, that's why I've kind of gone with Onana, who I would probably play this week, and we'll sort of come on to why when we see my team. But more so because just longer term, Man United's defence isn't great, but they also don't give up the greatest sort of chances. So there will be a lot of shots from range and therefore hopefully a lot of save points for Onana to pick up, even in a game like this against Burnley, because again, I wouldn't be upset if I did start with Onana in goal and Burnley had 30 shots at him from outside the box. I'd expect to hopefully get, he might concede a couple of goals, but I might get, a couple of save points out of it.
Sorry, I'm just trying to dig up something. So this was from John McKenzie on X. And when I saw this, I was in shock. I genuinely had no idea. I knew United had been facing like the 100 shots in 6 games and all that stuff you were saying. And I knew they'd been facing like 20 plus shots a game consecutively. But what he said was in the Coventry game, right? They only... So imagine the tweet leads with only 18 shots faced by Man United today. The first time they've not conceded 20 plus shots in a game since the FA Cup tie against Forest back in February 1st, 9 games ago. The last time they conceded less than 20 in the league was Wolves on February 1st. You have to go back to the 8th of January for the last time they conceded a single figure shots in a game, and that was Wigan in the FA Cup. Wow.
They just lack it in that midfield, don't they, in terms of being able to maintain possession and move the ball from their defence to their midfield and keep hold of it and find that space. They keep getting exploited by poor passing in the midfield area. Like, we can all think of numerous times where a Man United midfielder has been robbed of the ball with his facing towards his own goal most of the time. So the attacker's not even having to change direction or anything. They're just nicking it off and running straight on at the defence. And it, you know, this kind of stats coincide with the fact that Man United are relying on Harry Maguire plus another, and that another being either the young
Campbell Waller then got injured, right? So then Casemiro filled in there. Like, I think one thing I will say for United
Evans has played there.
Like, that's what I was going to say. So like they have had like something disgusting, like 40 different back five combinations this season, and like just the sheer number of injuries, I think that has to be taken into account. So I will say that. However, like, you know, like teams like Spurs, Newcastle, Liverpool, they have been hamstrung by injuries throughout this season too, and none of their underlying numbers have ever been this poor defensively. But like their expected goal difference, they're like 17th or 18th in the table. Like for their shots faced this season, they are on course to concede more shots than the Derby team that got 11 points, the worst Premier League team in the history of Premier League. So,
well, as
yeah, that's crazy, right?
It's crazy, and I've got the stats for Man U and Burnley both in front of me, just looking at it. Man U's XG for at home is 26.27 XG. Okay, forget about that. The XG conceded at home is 27.27. Burnley's at home is 27.25. Away, Man United is 37.02. Burnley's away is 35.75. So
Here's
Man United are on par with Burnley for defense this season.
And Sheffield United and West Ham and these teams, yeah.
It's crazy. It is crazy when you actually...
I never would have thought this is like the stage. Now, there is a huge gap, as you say, between the defensive line and the forwards. It just seems to be a chasm of emptiness with like, there's literally just space for years between the front line and back line. And there doesn't seem to be a midfield. Like, no wonder they're losing these midfield battles. Like, I don't see a midfield there. It's actually crazy. I do hope that with the fixtures, things will turn. And with the kind of getting to the final, that will always bring, you know, urgency and like hopefully momentum, and, you know, winning breeds confidence. And I'd like to think things will go good. Now, my problem is Bruno Fernandes is someone who I feel like he's someone I will probably have on the wild card. I really like him, and I'm going to buy him in Sky tonight as well, I think. Now, the next thing is Onana seems to me a better shout than Dalot just because of the sheer number of shots we're saying that they face, right? And then I'm kind of like, do I then therefore really want Dalot there? Like, am I having Dalot just to play him in the bench boost? Is like, would a Brighton defender be better there? Like, are there other options? Is a single game week player better there? Like, do I really want double United defense? Because I'm not going to be getting double attack. That's for sure. So
Dalot could go well though. Like if we're looking at these numbers on sort of the left and right, like they are good, and I think he will offer that attacking threat. And I think it's almost that balance, right, where we know our defenders probably aren't going to keep many clean sheets on the ones we go for. So you are going for that upside element of it. The thing that steers me away from him just is that fact that he is expensive compared to what you can get for defenders right now. If you are looking to bench boost in 37 and have a high likelihood of having 15 doublers for it that are good as well, that I don't see. I see a difference, but I don't see a substantial difference between Maguire and Dalot, for example, in attacking threat in sort of the next 3-4 fixture run. So it's one of those interesting ones. So yeah, like you just wouldn't want to double up on Man United defense, would you? That's just the concerning part of, do you want it? Their double is good in 37, and hopefully a lot of players are playing to try and get in that FA Cup final squad and start in 11. But that's more so from that attacking perspective. And I think it's why people like Mainu have stood out so significantly this season for Man U fans, because he is a great player, box to box, winning the ball, moving it forward and being progressive. And that was something they lacked for a lot of this season, of someone moving that ball forward. So yeah, it will be interesting. I think it will be an interesting game. It's one that you're definitely starting someone like Bruno if you bring him in.
I'm guessing we're not buying Burnley assets, right? Just to be clear. Like, I know we have some good friends of the show, like Alex Volo. He's been on the Wilson Odobert train for a while. But I think with the fixtures to go and the relegation pretty much guaranteed at this stage, that is not something we're going to buy, right? Like, it's just the United players here we're interested in. Højlund was someone I looked at if Jackson had got the yellow and the suspension yesterday. But then part of me thinks if I was going to go for Højlund, why not just go for like Watkins instead or something? Like just what's the point?
It starts getting close to that, where you just go in Højlund in 2 games. You can look at Højlund over the entire season, and Ollie Watkins has beaten him in like a quarter of it. So it doesn't matter if he's got 2 games if Ollie Watkins scores every game and Højlund scores 1 in 4.
Now, I like Højlund, don't get me wrong, but it just feels that the Man United attacking players do not pass to him very often. He did go through a really good spell. He got player of the month and everything in the league. So there was a spell where he was in a rich vein of form and they were finding him and he was getting the goals. But it seems to be that they've reverted to a system where like they're not giving him the ball again. So I just, he seems to be a bit shy and not shooting as well. I don't know what's changed, but hopefully for him, things will get better next year. I think he's a great talent. I really like him. I like Mainly. There's a lot of good things in that United squad. And I think it's an exciting time with the new owners and the kind of the Old Trafford redevelopment talks and stuff with the council. Like, I think good times are ahead for United fans. And there is a final to look forward to for the second year in a row. So there are good things. But when you look at the underlying numbers, I think you feel that they've perhaps overperformed a little bit in the league at least. And it concerns me that I'm doing stuff like, say, buying Bruno for Saka and buying Dallo for like a second Arsenal defender, let's say. Like, I just kind of look at that and I think, am I really doing that? Like, what do they have left to fight for in the league? And like what am I doing here? Like, is it just double game week fever? Like,
it's an interesting one, isn't it? I'm thinking the same. 2 games for a team that has nothing to play for better than 1 game for a team that does. And that's kind of the gambling 37 of how many teams will have something to play for either way. So you're almost,
we won't know, right? It's hard to know before we get there.
It may happen in the middle of 37. It wouldn't surprise me if Man City sewed the title up in their first game of 37 and then just benched everyone whilst Jack Grealish went and had some Jaeger bombs. And just, had a rotated squad for the next 2 games, in which case, Spurs assets are absolutely incredible because they've got City in that second game and the double in 37. So it's kind of like, how do you hedge your bets in things like this? Teams like Spurs and Villa, who are, Watkins in particular, who you raise, like, positives about Villa, they are pushing for Champions League. Negatives, they're the only team still in Europe and they're not the biggest squad. So it's an interesting.
There are pros and cons. We'll keep talking about United assets in the wildcard section and as we do the Q&A, I'm sure. But we can go to the Newcastle versus Sheffield United next, and then I'm sure we'll come back to some of these assets. But before we do, I'm just going to read out some of the comments in the chat that made me laugh. So, Evo, he says Højlund gets 0 service out of void, so fair enough. He or she also says you're more likely to clean sheet with double Spurs defense than double Man United. So that's saying something. Tricky MF says Man United's expected points put them 16th or so. They are overperforming. And yeah, I think I agree with this point from Evo, and then we'll go to the next match. So Rashford, Bruno, and Garnacho are more concerned with their own goals and assists than supplying Højlund. McTominay scores more frequent than Højlund. Yeah, it kind of feels like if someone's going to score that isn't Rashford, Bruno, or Garnacho, it's going to be McTominay running into the box to feed off the scrap of their shot because they've already taken the shot themselves and it's rebounded out. It's like Højlund's there and he's got players around him and he's keeping them away from the other attackers so they can get a shot off. But it's like no one's looking to give him the ball. He's just there to cause a nuisance almost and like let the others shoot. It feels like recently, but I hope that changes because I really like Højlund and I hope to see more from him next season. And I also hope that United win the final and ensure Man City do not get a trophy. That would be very lovely. So Newcastle versus Sheffield United. 2.33 NetxG is the best NetxG of the week for Newcastle. Sheffield United 1.37. This is predicting like a 2-1 Newcastle win. You're the Sheffield United expert. Obviously, you've watched like hours of their footage. You also told me earlier that one of your lessons for next year is that you had a look at your captaincy so far, and out of 34 weeks, is it 5 times you've captained the Sheffield United? 3 times. Okay. That's still pretty bad. I would just say, like maybe, I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe tonight, Brereton Diaz scores a hat trick against Man United, and you're redeemed with him as your captain. But obviously, you captained Cameron Archer twice in a row. Like, I do think that you almost, because you became the Sheffield United expert, having watched so much of their footage and analysed all the teams that go face them, the number 9 was essentially not getting returns and was getting tripled up by the defenders. And it's almost like because you were then that expert of that team, you wanted to put your money where your mouth was. And buy them and captain them. But will you be doing that again next season? Like captaining players from a team with minus 50 goal difference?
No, I think a lesson this year is it's okay to like a player and it's okay to start that player. But if they come from a promoted team that is expected to be relegated, you don't have to sort of double down and captain them. Maybe it was the fact that I'd watched way too much Sheffield United and therefore I knew who was good for Sheffield United. And I knew how well they could stop other teams in certain ways, but forgot that there were 19 other teams in the league. I don't know what came over me. The Archer one, there's multiple people I'd blame, but won't. The one this week on Brereton Diaz, there's no explanation behind it because he wasn't one of my transfers this week until probably 1 a.m. the day of the deadline when I went, I'll bring him in, and it automatically had the armband on him, and I looked at him and went, fine.
You thought that looks good. You're like, I've been here before.
Yeah.
I've seen the red and white striped shirt with the captain armband before.
But midfielder this time, oh, lovely. It was meant to be on Havertz, but I just refused to change it. So it is what it is. But no,
I really hope that he gets some kind of return for you because that would be hilarious. Oh man, that is great. Like, what was it? 5-0 they lost to Burnley, was it? That is some shocking stuff.
Yeah. No, it was 4-1 because Hammer got
4-1. Oh, yeah.
5-0 in the other one, which again was a very good point that they lost the last game against Burnley 5-0. We know how they perform against each other. So, yeah, it's interesting. I do expect, though, I guess that moving it back to the relevancy of this game.
Yeah, to Newcastle and stuff and Sheffield United.
I like teams like Luton, like Sheffield United, like Burnley at this stage of the season for wiping clean sheets of the opposition because they will continue to attack. We've seen Luton have gone 3-0 down to Man City and brought it back to 3-2, right? And that's just at a regular stage of the season. So Luton are a team that's always good for goals. But I think you are kind of at this stage of the season, a couple of years ago, we've seen teams like Norwich get shock wins or shock results because there's nothing to lose and a lot to gain for the players in terms of being able to secure their own personal safety in the Premier League by attracting potential suitors. So it wouldn't surprise me, given how porous Newcastle can be at times, for Sheffield United to get the goal here, as the NetxG shows. I do think Newcastle really exploit them out wide, though. The common theme that I kept saying and where it bit me back was that one thing that Sheffield United are very good at is marking a solitary striker because they have 3 centre-backs, or even when they've got 2, but they will ensure there's one either side of that striker at all times. There are certain strikers who don't play that way, who are more mobile, who will move around, who will go out wide, and they struggle with tracking those ones. And I was
so you reckon Isaac wouldn't have maybe the same problems as
he
less mobile strikers?
Exactly, yeah. He's a lot more mobile, but I do like this game a lot for Gordon and Barnes if he starts. I think they're going to have a great chance. And what it also does with the way that teams like Newcastle attack defences like Sheffield United is they'll be looking for the overlapping full-back runs, and then they'll be looking not necessarily to cut the ball into Isaac, who at that point when he arrives in the box may attract the attention of the centre-backs, but instead to Bruno Guimaraes outside the box, who I think could have a fair, whoever's playing that central midfield, late arriving position, I think will have a lot of chances in games like this because that's where Sheffield United suck. And they're also one of the worst teams I've ever seen at defending set pieces. They have this combination of man-to-man and zonal, but it just doesn't coincide. So if a player runs into the right area, where then the man doesn't follow them and there's no one in that zone. And quite often nobody tracks that second ball. So we see a lot of goals against them just from that secondary phase of a set piece. So look, I expect it to be a game where Newcastle concede, but Gordon, Barnes, Isaac all to do well. I think someone like a Dan Burn might be able to nick a header in it. I think Ashar could really exploit them with his long passing over the top. So I'm sure you're the same, but Newcastle players are definitely on the menu for Wildcard, given this fixture and 37. And I guess if there was news that Cole Palmer wasn't fit, there is a world where I could see myself captaining Gordon this game week over a Son. As crazy as that might sound, but I'd probably have more confidence in Gordon at home against Sheffield United exploiting the wide areas than I would have a lot of other players. So yeah, should be a good game, maybe like a 4-1, 4-2 to Newcastle.
So you reckon like it could even be a shout for like single game week player with captaincy. Yeah, I like that. Do you have a triple up of Newcastle? Actually, you know what? We'll look at when we get to your wildcard, we'll talk more about Newcastle. I think for now, we'll go to the next matchup just in the interest of getting to there. So Wolves and Luton. So this one is 1.93 NetxG for Wolves, and Luton is 1.47. Wolves is a team that I have really been hot on, and it has burnt me because Cunha didn't make the double game week, and I thought I'd be really smart, and instead of doing Cunha to Mateta, I sold Palmer to get a fifth mid. So now I'm kind of looking back on it, and I'm like, oh god, I went Van Dijk instead of Trent. I went Kai instead of Odegaard, but that ended up okay-ish. But yeah, my original plan would have been something like White, Jota, and Mateta, and I would have brought those three in for a -4, and I didn't. So I'm massively regretting that. I'm like 20, 30 points down from the average score of the week, and I'm just like stagnating in my rank bracket. I've still got Cunha. It sounded like he's doing everything he can to be involved. So I assume that means at best a 10-minute cameo off the bench tonight. So maybe my views on Wolves and Cunha will change after tonight if he subs on for Haaland and gets a return for me. But right now, it's not looking good, bruv. That's all I can tell you. Not having Mateta and keeping Cunha, that is really coming back to bite me. Fucking up. I'm so gutted about that one. And yeah, it's just really annoying. But yeah, Cunha, I had to use him as well. There was a week where I think Foden was benched, and I started Cunha, and Mateta was facing City that week, and Mateta scored, and Cunha came off the bench. So it was like 2-3 weeks after I bought him, I thought he would start, and then he didn't. And when I do need him now for the double, he's not fit. So I'm just really bitter about Wolves. But my bitterness and war stories aside, how do you see this game between Wolves and Luton going? Because Luton could still stay up. Like I'm really, praying they can do something. Their goal difference isn't good, but they could just about still make it. Like they score enough goals, as we said, right? Like it's just they also concede a lot.
Yeah, and I think that's the key part, right? Where Luton have a lot to fight for. Wolves kind of don't really right now. What are they? 11th in the table, so safe, but no real chance of European football. Well, I guess if they win tonight, that puts them potentially able to get European football. So maybe it's not dead, but yeah, I think this game will still matter for both teams. So we won't see a drop off or anyone on the beach necessarily. I think the Wolves turnaround, we could see some rotation. I was interested on the first Wolves game that Sarabia didn't start. And it was good, obviously, to see Aït-Nouri come on. I think when I look at this game, Luton are one of the worst teams away from home at defending set pieces. So they've conceded 9 goals away from home in set pieces. So you'd like to think maybe Sarabia on set pieces could be involved if he starts. So it depends on who plays today. And I don't really see anyone good in the air from Wolves this year. I think maybe Kilman's their best aerial threat from a centre-back perspective. But I think it's more like a Mario Lemina who's probably going to be more on the end of it, again, if he's available. So, yeah, I think it'll be an interesting one. It wouldn't surprise me if Luton continue to, get a goal there. So maybe a Coulson, Morris, Doughty on set pieces as well, because Wolves aren't great at them because of that sort of poor aerial threat attacking-wise isn't great defensively either. So, yeah, I think it'll be an open game. It'll be one where if you've got Aït-Nouri, I'd expect him to start in an attacking position given absences again. So I think he could well be on the end of things. And
so do you think for non-wildcarders, right? Like you wouldn't be doing like Aït-Nouri to Dalot this week, right? You just play Aït-Nouri.
Yeah.
If you're gonna get like a Dalot or a United defender or a Spurs defender, it's almost like you wait till 37 for when you're going to bench boost and buy them then, right? Like I don't see any reason to prioritize rushing to them now without a wild card.
Yeah, exactly. And let's say between now and then, Man United had an injury to another defender. Do you really want to have any of their defense going into 37 with all of the absences? It would just be so threadbare. So yeah, I'd agree. I'd sort of, if I had Aït-Nouri, he'd be one that I'd be holding on to for this fixture. Not necessarily looking at that clean sheet. It could happen, but those NetxG numbers for Luton are pretty strong for an away team. So yeah, I think it should be a pretty open game. It could be a draw. Luton could get the win. Wolves could get the win. But I'd start a Doughty if I'd own him as well, possibly, because I think he could do well from set pieces. I'd start 8 Nuri, and if I had Sarabia hanging over from this double, then I'd be happy to start him as well.
Yeah, fair. And I think I saw some quotes about Sarabia that he'd started like multiple free games in quick succession, like with no turnaround, and ultimately the manager needed to just give him that rest. So I assume he's going to be straight back in. But the way he framed it was like, yeah, so he can start tonight if I want to. So it's like he's also trying not to give away tactics because he doesn't. He's like Cunha's fighting to be fit. This guy's fighting to be fit. That guy might come back. Like I will decide. He's taken something out of Pep and Arteta's book of just and Eddie Howe just blatantly lying. Sometimes I would say I'd go as far as that just to keep the opposition on their toes. But yeah, I wouldn't be buying players from either team going forwards. But I think if you had them, our conclusion is that this NetxG and the Wolves matchup is good enough to play your Wolves attackers or defenders if you don't want to resell them yet. And if you've got Doughty from Luton, maybe this is a nice game for him as well. But I think that's about it for these guys. We'll keep going to the next Saturday fixture, the next televised one, Everton versus Brentford. This will be interesting, won't it? Because if Luton win today, and if Everton lose to Liverpool, which we assume they will, you might start to think of this match more differently because suddenly Everton with their home crowd are against a Brentford team that was sleepwalking towards relegation, but seems to have just done enough to not really need to worry. So they're almost pretty much safe as well now. And there's some weird shit going on with Tony, right? Like, is he being protected to sell him, or has he had a falling out, or like, is he just injured? Like, yeah, what's going on there? So that's it. I don't think everything is all good at Brentford, and they've had some major season-long injuries. Obviously, like they've been missing a lot. Mbeumo came back; he looked great. Wissa's been doing well, but something just feels off there to me personally. That's what I'm going to say. The NetxG, just looking at them quickly. So Everton 1.66 NetxG, Brentford 1.42. Looking like a 1-1, 2-1. Everton were very fortunate to keep a clean sheet with the Pickford Hall. I think there was at least one, if not 2 or 3 penalties they could have had Forest could have had against them. So I think that's a very fortunate clean sheet. But what do you think of this game? Like, will Everton be targeting the Brentford game if they were to lose as like a must-win home game to pretty much almost secure not being relegated?
It's a tough one, isn't it, for Everton on multiple fronts. So Brentford have scored 10 goals in their last 3 games, which is just crazy. I know 5 of them were against Luton, but it's still a lot. And we've kind of seen Jekyll and Hyde from Everton, as you said there. So what have they got left? They've got, like I said, Liverpool today, then Brentford at home, then Luton away, then Sheffield United at home. Yeah, Everton will be going for it, but I don't think Brentford are the kind of team to relax either. I think Wiss is on really good form at the moment, and I do expect us to see a lot more of Sean Dyche trying to secure the game and looking to keep it tight for the majority of it and maybe nick it 1-0 or be happy with 0-0s. So I think we probably could see lower scoring ones. It's an interesting one, right? Because Everton are one of those teams that people are considering on a wild card, whether you get Pickford in for that sort of bench boost in 37, whether you go cheap with a Branthwaite or whether you get like a Mikalenko, etc. But I haven't got any of them myself because I just look at all of the games they've got left and think it's going to be tough to keep clean sheets in it. I think Everton can do well, but they just still don't have anyone really who puts the ball in the back of the net in terms of as a striker, whether it's Beto, whether it's Dominic Calvert-Lewin, they're not good finishers this season. And that's saying a lot when you've got a league with sort of Darwin and Nicholas Jackson. But you'd kind of put the two of them alongside them. They're not getting
Calvert-Lewin, yeah, just on him, I just want to mention him because he's been disappointing for me because he had that season with the 15 league goals and he was getting to the England setup and he's always looked good against Arsenal as well. Obviously, like he's great in the air. But I feel like he's not the player he was pre-injury. But then, like, when he gets the ball, he's playing like he is that player. I don't know if I'm just imagining that, but like, it feels like he's being very selfish and like taking off shots when like a pass would be the right option in those situations. It's almost like he wants those goals to like go back to what he knows he's capable of doing. But it's almost like that's then meaning that actually he's not playing as well as he would if he was like not being selfish, because he's not accepting that he's not that same striker he was however many years ago. And I find that a bit disappointing because I really liked him, and it's just sad.
Yeah.
It's sad for me to see a professional, especially an England international, that, you know, a few years ago you would assume he'd be going to these Euros, but obviously, like, on current form, so you don't want him anywhere near that team.
Yeah, it's an interesting one because it does seem as if a lot of the raw talent is still there, but in terms of that sharpness, match awareness, vision, etc., it's all delayed, which it happens when you've been out for that long. I think what I find interesting at this stage of the season, and someone who I always keep my eye on, he was sort of a hero through the last stages of last season. I think I had him in my Gameweek 38 wildcard last year as well. But this is the kind of game and situation where a Decore could be more involved than a lot of other players, sort of sitting behind the strikers, picking up that sort of loose ball, etc., and getting his shots off. So, yeah, look, he's not a realistic target when we've got so many midfield options that we're all looking at right now. But it wouldn't surprise me in a game like this if the difference was someone like a Decore. Nothing really jumps out in terms of, and looking at how Gabe's lined up these zonal chances, there's nothing that really jumps out, is there, apart from Everton are pretty good at, or Brentford are pretty weak on their left and right. So Everton should be good in terms of defending the wings and probably more vulnerable through the middle. But Everton are probably stronger through the middle than they are out wide defensively. So it could kind of
so. I think so. And I think the other thing to point out is obviously, like, if Pickford doesn't concede tonight, then he's still in contention for that Golden Glove. So it's just something to bear in mind. I see a lot of misinformation that Raya has already won it, but Raya has 14 clean sheets and Pickford has 10, and Pickford has 5 games to go. So if Liverpool score tonight, then David Raya has won the Golden Glove. But yeah, I think we'll keep going. The next game is actually a bit more exciting. It's Aston Villa versus Chelsea. Obviously, one of the first teams that double in Chelsea. I'm just going to have a quick look. So this is the 8 p.m. Oh, okay, it's another 8 p.m. kickoff on the Saturday. They're quite rare, aren't they? So yeah, so just having a quick look here. Aston Villa 2.13 NetxG. Chelsea just 1.6. This is like a 2-2. This looks like a chaos game based on the NetxG. I'm just looking at some of the other stuff like the zonals to see if there's anything I can call out for the podcast listeners. Chelsea centrally 1.9. It's not great for Nicholas Jackson. What else do we have? We have Aston Villa central zonals 4.2. It's one of the highest of the week. Yeah, see, so this is exactly the debate I was having with you. Jackson versus Watkins. Like, Jackson has 2 doubles, or Watkins has points. And he's fighting for top 4. So, like, how do you see this game going? Because, like, I could see this being like 2-1 to Villa and, you know, Watkins getting a goal and an assist. And I could see Jackson getting no return and a yellow card. So what are we all doing with Jackson as our third forward in these wildcards? Does the data make you less or more likely to get him, is my question.
Look, I'll be honest, the reason why I'm looking at Nicholas Jackson is because 5 is better than 3 in a lot of the situations, and there's not exactly many good striking options outside of a Watkins. So I think that's the kind of challenge behind it. But yeah, Villa are good, aren't they? They're just so good. We know it firsthand, having taken 0 points off of them and scoring 0 goals against them, which isn't the most enjoyable experience to have in person either. So I think Villa will continue to push. Like, I was doing some calculations, and if you look at Spurs' remaining fixtures, we know they're tough. So I think Villa realistically only need to pick up another 4 to 6 points to secure that 4th place, unless Spurs can take like 9 points off of Arsenal, City, Liverpool, Chelsea, etc. But it does make it interesting for games like this. So I think, no, it wouldn't surprise me if Villa won this game 2-1. It really wouldn't. I'd just be hoping that Nicholas Jackson had back-heeled it into Cole Palmer's path or something. I'll be honest, whether or not I have Nicholas Jackson is also going to be dependent on whether or not we hear anything on Cole Palmer, because we know how important he is to that team. So, yeah, I think off of the back of that Chelsea performance, you'd like to think that they're going to spend time and turn it around, but Villa are a good, solid team, particularly at home. And I think actually Craig might have jinxed it with how much he's been speaking about it recently when he's been on here. But Villa conceded their first penalty of the season against Bournemouth. Up until that, Craig kept reminding us that they were yet to concede a penalty. So maybe Cole Palmer doesn't get a penalty in this game, or maybe the shackles are off and now Villa concede a penalty in every game. Who knows? But if you're banking on a Palmer penalty in this, and the stats say that was the first one Villa had against Bournemouth.
Yeah, no, I think that's fair. Palmer seems like, he seems to be like the main captaincy shout, I think, of this game week, the double. I do think that's where the majority will go, unless we hear otherwise about his illness, but it didn't sound serious. Defensively, what do you think? So I currently have Gusto in one of my drafts, but he doesn't fill me with confidence, because I feel like even if he's back this weekend, there's been so many times this season that like he'll get a niggle or a knock, or like he'll play a game and then he won't be seen. And like, I don't know if I can carry that through to a wild card bench boost, because like by the time I'm going to use the bench boost, is he going to play both? Am I? And then my other alternative is, obviously I do want the triple. So it's kind of like, if I've got Jackson and Palmer for sake of argument, that leaves one slot. Petrovic. And I'm like, does he like,
He's
having
bad.
watched him against Arsenal last night, I'm like, does he keep his spot? Like other Chelsea fans believe that he will, and Sanchez isn't going to come back and take it. But I feel like with either Gusto or Sanchez, there is, even if it's a very small risk, there's a risk I won't get the 2 double fixtures for the bench boost out of him in 37. And that kind of worries me, firstly. And secondly, it's like, what about, like, what are the other options? Because, like, do I want Disasi? Like, what, like, who else? Do I want Chilwell? Like, there is no one else. So it's kind of like, Madueke was in my thoughts a few months back as like maybe a potential attacking player to get. But now there's so many good midfielders have one, and I'm like, he's not going to get in. I get Johnson in from Spurs ahead of him. So it's like, so what? Like, am I really filling up with these players? Like, what am I doing?
I keep looking at the different things showing sort of Petrovic. Yeah, he probably will get 6 or 7 points across this double, but he could also get 0. Like, okay, it's unlikely he gets 0, but like, he's bad. Right, the drop off from a goalkeeping, shot stopping perspective from like to Petrovic from Sanchez is significant. It's not a small drop off. Like, Petrovic is not Premier League level goalkeeper. He's fine, but he's not Premier League level. And we saw that he got praise against Arsenal for a fantastic shot where it hit him in his chest when he just turned around and his head happened to face the same direction. I don't blame him for the first goal. Whenever people say a keeper shouldn't be beaten at their near post as a goalkeeper, that's nonsense. You stand there and let me kick a ball as hard as I can at you and see if you can save it. It's very difficult to react from that close range. And that's me kicking it. Try it against a professional. But no, I'm cold on Petrovic. I'm warmer on Gusto, but I agree with your point. Like, who plays for Chelsea definitely this double and in 37? Because you can find a way to bench them with a wild card here for sort of 36 if you wanted to, but who actually does it? And I just don't know. So I think I'm resigned to go in Gusto, but I am looking for reasons not to, if I'm honest. And I think seeing a game like this where they're expected to concede 1.6, and what we've been saying about Ollie Watkins and Villa and how they've got a lot more to fight for than Chelsea, who unfortunately this season are a team that have a tendency to, when they're losing, a few players just become lazy in their tackling. And I was messaging a few friends during the Arsenal game. As soon as it went 2-0, I went, this will be 4 or 5 now, because that's the kind of way Chelsea are if they don't have someone
like they look good in the first half, right? Like, they had a few chances. There was lots of block shots, but as soon as that second goal went in, like, I actually went back and saw some. There's like a Chelsea commentary of the game from their own commentator. Right? He's a Chelsea fan, obviously, but he's quite unbiased. And like, when I think it was the second goal when he was like, just fucking get up, Madueke. The normal pundits were like, oh yeah, like should be called back 20 minutes for a foul. Like, yeah. Like the Chelsea guy wasn't having it. When it got to 3-0, it was at I think it was the 59th, 60th minute. All I heard him say is like, oh man, like we need the full whistle to come right now. It can't come soon enough. Like, I was like, oh shit. Like when these guys go down, their heads drop. Like
And it's
they're
your
a young group of, they're young, right? Like they're young. Like they're a bunch of young players. Nicholas Jackson had played like what 10 professional matches of football in a top league before he came to Chelsea. I don't think he was ever meant to become like everything's reliant on him. And obviously the Nkunku injury doesn't help, but it's crazy, right? Like they're being relied on to carry the entire club forward, and a lot of them are young kids. And
well, that's it. What did they say during the game? The youngest team this season, and that's including having Thiago Silva. Like that's just mental. And yeah, like I think we can't judge them on that, and it is a transition period. But it was that inevitable thing where if you're playing a team like Arsenal, and the reason I'm bringing it up is because Villa have that same tenacity when a team shows weakness, when players show laziness in tracking back or passing the ball around the back. Villa will pounce. Arsenal pounce. As soon as they sniff blood and saw someone's not tracking this run, Ben White exposed them time after time on that right-hand side. And it was as soon as they saw that, they just weren't following anymore. So, yeah, it's an interesting one, but I definitely... Maybe there is a world where I'm Watkins over Jackson. I'll be honest, I was watching the game hoping there was a yellow card for Jackson.
I was praying. I wanted to be ruled out of having to buy him, yeah. I didn't even want to have the option. I didn't want it to cross my mind. Like, I was like, let me just be done with having to make this goddamn decision. But I'm just having a look at survived. He should have had a red card, if I'm perfectly blunt with you as well. That's what's really annoying.
Yeah, well, it's that, and look, I made a joke about it as well, how he tried to punch the ball into the back of the net. But again, that's a concern for us looking to maybe...
Yeah, what kind of shot was that? I'm sorry, but you've got to be brave. As a professional footballer, as a centre forward, you can't be going in to head the ball and stick your hand out next to your face to protect yourself. Like, who shoots like that? What striker headers a ball like that?
And that's it. They said, he was worried about a high foot from Gabriel. You get a penalty. You don't need to put your hand up there. You take the kick, or you take the ball smacking you in the face and it goes in off of your face. Like we've seen.
Yeah, it doesn't matter if it's a beautiful shot. Like even if it deflects off your chin.
Yeah, it's worth the exact same. Like we were watching that game and Gabriel almost scored an own goal when we were 1-0 up, right? And it's those moments like that where that would have been exactly the same, and you go with it. So yeah, I guess one question, and I don't know if we're going to move on to Bournemouth, Brighton, or Spurs, Arsenal next, but I guess something that I've started to genuinely deliberate is whether or not I'd put Timo Werner above Nicholas Jackson right now in that forward spot.
That is a good question. I don't think I can handle that with Richarlison coming back into the fold. Yeah, I don't think I could do that. I think if Richarlison was still out, that would be an open question mark for me. But even then, it's like him and Johnson together, and now you add Richarlison to the mix. It's like not for me.
Oh yeah, it's one of those. I think I was listening to Above Average FPL, and they did a really good Spurs related pod for it this week. So I was really listening in, trying to work out is there anyone I get from there. And they seem to be hot on Werner's minutes and think that he's great at sort of having the ball, but just think he's absolutely dreadful at finishing. So it's one of those where you go, well, if you get him, you're going for assists. But they seem to be pretty decent on his minutes. And maybe is that better than Jackson? Maybe there's a world where Nkunku comes back and saves Chelsea and plays alongside Jackson. Who knows? But maybe that's another question mark over Jackson about what happens when Nkunku does come back. He won't start both games in a double, but could he?
But he could also be someone who doesn't get both starts in the double by the time the bench he's got Jackson. Oh man, you're really
have a double, and we might consider not having more than two players of them, despite having two doubles, just because you could find yourself tripling up on Chelsea and not getting a double off of one of your players in either of those doubles.
That is crazy, man. No, let's keep going. As you said, we'll go to the Sunday fixtures now. We've got 4 more fixtures. We're going to rattle through some of these and then get to your wildcard draft, do the Q&A. I've been starting the questions as we go. We're about an hour in now, guys. First time we're asking if you've enjoyed the show so far, if you found it entertaining, if you've laughed with us or at us, please do hit that like button and subscribe if you're new around here. But yeah, otherwise, let's go to the Sunday fixtures. So Bournemouth versus Brighton. I'm just going to timestamp this as 1 hour exactly. So this one, Bournemouth NetxG 1.59, Brighton 1.37. This is looking what, like a 1-1, 2-1 Bournemouth. Let's see how Bournemouth get on against. Is it Palace they're playing tonight?
Wolves.
No, sorry, no, they already played them. It's
Wolves.
Wolves, yeah, Bournemouth versus
Wolves
Wolves.
away.
Okay, so yeah, I'm just thinking if that would have any impact on me, but yeah, so I think this game, Brighton are currently facing like a big crisis as they have all season. Like nearly everyone's out. It's almost like just go to next season, right? Ferguson's ruled out for the rest of the season. Lamperty's still injured. Estupinian's injured for the rest of the season. We might be seeing Gross playing as a left back or right back in one of the games. It is just a rough time for them. I think personally, Solanke's been really good this season. And I think Bournemouth are going to do this one. I think Brighton playing on the Thursday night, playing against Man City with a half-fit team, I think it's going to take everything they have out of them. I genuinely think that Brighton are going to come to this Bournemouth game and just drop off a cliff because I'm hoping, and maybe it's major optimism here, that they can get some points tomorrow. But crazier things have happened, right? I think City dropped points last season at Brighton away and at Nottingham Forest away. And they faced both of them away. So I'm going to stay here and be optimistic and send good vibes into the universe. But if anyone in the live chat is wondering what Kieran is doing, we said before the show that we turned the camera on and off if there was like a weird delay or lag. So don't worry, he is there, even though it looks like he's going in and out. But yeah, what do you think about this? Because I honestly think I see Bournemouth winning. I think that Brighton are going to be dead after tomorrow against Man City.
Yeah, it'll be an interesting one, won't it? I think Brighton, they're just so many injuries throughout this season, such horrible luck, and they're not playing that exciting attacking football that they have been in the past. They were a team where if you'd asked me 6-7 weeks ago, I definitely would have had a Brighton player on my wildcard going into this week.
Especially with the double, right?
Yeah. That, perfect bench boosting. And I think there's still a world where people might go with a Bruggen or a Dunk, or I know that you're very keen and you 100% want to bring Lamptey into your team. So the good news is he is expected back on the 5th of May. So you can go ahead and add him into your team, Nima.
So the last time I brought him in on my first wild card around game week 8 to 10 period, he was injured, and I brought him in waiting for when he would be fit. So it wouldn't be unusual for me to do such a thing. But speaking of these bastards, Lamptey and Estupinian, who I would always play the wrong one each week, my next combo was obviously I sold both of them, right, for Kirkesh and Zabani. And now, in the double game week, I sold Kirkesh last week to get Rico Lewis instead of Guardiola. And then this week, obviously, I've started Zabani for my double, and Kirkesh got the assist playing winger, and Kirkesh gets the second start tonight. I just had a look; he's in the lineup, so I am pretty livid. I feel like whenever I buy a defender or two defenders from these kind of teams, like Bournemouth, Brighton, it just always goes wrong for me. I always play the wrong one. I bench the wrong one. They always get injured the week I need them. Earlier this year, I had Ait Nouri for a great run of games. As soon as I brought him in, injured, the Wolves kept like 3 back-to-back clean sheets. And those were the weeks I would have played him. I just, cheap defenders in me go so badly. So whoever you see me with, whether it's a Brighton defender, whether it's Dallo, whether it's Van der Ven, whatever defender you see me pick on this wild card, the sub 4.5 million, 5 million, I can guarantee you now they're not going to be there by the time the bench boost comes. It's like written in the stars, mate.
That's not good news for me, and we'll see that when we move on to my wildcard team later. But yeah, I agree with you just on this one. Like, I can't go near anyone from Brighton. Maybe there's a world where I go Pedro, but it's not a likely world. And just because you mentioned the Bournemouth lineup, it is worth mentioning. Ait Nouri does start today. Sarabia does start today. Hee-Chen Huang does start today. So, yeah.
Semenya starts as well for Bournemouth. Cunha is on the bench. So now I have, inevitably what's going to happen is one of two things. Cunha's going to sub on and get 1 point, and block a Rico Lewis clean sheet tomorrow, or he's not going to sub on and Rico Lewis is going to sub on for 1 point. So whatever happens, I'm going to be screwed.
Rico Lewis will come on to shore things up in the final 5 minutes and get booked and concede a goal.
So I really need Cunha to sub on then, because my only hope of not getting a blank for this Haaland sub is Cunha subbing on and bagging a goal.
I guess in other, just whilst we're on team news things, apparently Diaz starts because Cody Hakpo's wife has given birth. So
Gakpo was in the leaked lineup earlier.
In one of them. But
yeah, there was a lot of leaked lineups. Calvert-Lewin starts
as well. Why is that, just genuinely, why is that useful 99 hours after the FPL deadline? Like literally 99 hours after, we're getting lineups 3.5 hours ahead of the official one. I don't get why it matters. Like, let's say you own a certain player and they're not starting. Someone's just brought your sadness further forward. Or if they are starting, brought your happiness further forward. But fundamentally, Liverpool attackers probably do better off the bench than starting. So, yeah, that'll be an interesting one.
I'm just looking for any more team news. Yeah, so it was meant to be Gakpo, but apparently due to personal reasons, Diaz starts. Gakpo posted a match day graphic on his Insta. Okay. That is okay. We got the full Liverpool: Alisson, Trent, Konate, Virgil, Robertson, Sozobosalai, McAllister, Jones, Salah, Nunez, Diaz. Okay. I do not see how Everton are going to do anything tonight, but seen crazier things. All right, let's keep going because there's only a couple matches and then we'll get to your team. So we've got Spurs versus Arsenal, the big North London derby. This is a big one. This is going to be like obviously 4 days rest for Arsenal after last night. Spurs have 15 days off in the time Arsenal played like 5 matches. I said earlier in the show that I felt winning kind of gives you energy and refreshes you and gives you new lease of life in your legs. How do you see this going? Because for me, I don't think 15 days off right at the end of a season is like when you're not even playing like friendlies. How do you stay match fit? Like for me personally, like that seems like really bad. Like I know Arsenal played a lot of games recently, but like I'd be quite confident going into this after the performance against Chelsea and having 4 days off. That Chelsea game was, I think it was after a horrible run of 8 games in 24 days. So we've come out the other side of the 8 games in 24 days. We finally get 4 days rest instead of 2 days rest. And then it's 1 game a week for the rest of the season, right? So for me, I just feel that this should be quite nice. Now, the data agrees with me, but not by much. It says that Arsenal NetxG is 2.07 and Spurs is 1.74. It sees a high-scoring game. But I'm not convinced that Arsenal will give up that many chances. Like, I just don't see it, personally. Like, I just don't see it. I think they've conceded like 6 league goals in 2024 in like 10 games. So that I don't see it. Udogi's out for the season. Poro's fighting to be fit. If neither fullback's ready for the weekend, like, what was Spurs going to do? I thought they were quite fortunate to get a draw at the Emirates earlier this season, and part of it was because Rice went off injured in the first half.
That's it. I think like Ben Davies is also rumoured to have not been seen in training yet or other things. So it'll be interesting. And I think to go to your point, what I found interesting as an Arsenal fan was after losing to Villa and losing to Bayern, immediately people jumped to the same conclusions of last season, forgetting that even going into the Wolves game, you know, I didn't necessarily expect a clean sheet against Chelsea, but going into Wolves, I felt quite comfortable because away from home, we have a very controlling possession game style where we limit the amount of opportunities the home team are going to have. And we don't have as many clear-cut opportunities ourselves, but we work from the basis of don't concede, don't go behind. And I think it's telling that, like, when's the last time Arsenal conceded away from home? They didn't concede at Wolves. They didn't.
It's 6 consecutive Premier League away games with a clean sheet.
There we are. Yeah. So
it's a club record possible. So just to give you some perspective, last season and this season combined, Arsenal have 20 away clean sheets. The 2017 to 2019 2-year season period, they had 2 clean sheets in 39 away games in 2 seasons combined.
Yeah.
And about 20 in the last 2. So from 2 in 2 seasons to 20 in 2 seasons. I think away from home, Arsenal defensively is a different team. Yes, maybe not going to be as attacking as you said, but Spurs do bleed chances, right? Like they will let up chances. It will happen.
They're the kind. That's it, and I think that'll be it. I think the high press will really hit Spurs, and they'll be looking. I think it's a perfect game from a Spurs player's perspective for Timo Werner, because they will be looking to hit us on the break. And if they do have Son centrally, then they're going to be more reliant on Timo Werner and then Son supporting him by sort of tracking that run and sort of making that space through the middle. So I think that's how Spurs get at Arsenal. But I think it will be a game where I'd expect Arsenal to just have a lot of that ball and for Saka to have an awful lot of the ball. So I think it's one where I don't think Saka will. I think Saka will attract a lot of attention from Spurs. And I think that will probably open up more space for Odegaard than anyone else. So I think we're going to see another masterclass from Odegaard controlling a lot of the game. It won't be an easy game for Arsenal because it is the North London derby. It does mean a lot to both sets of fans. Some fans it means more to than others because, whatever. But fundamentally, it is a big game at this stage of the season. It is bragging rights, and we all have fans or friends that are fans of the other club. So you look forward to it. But I'd agree with you. If you were just looking at the two teams across this season, you're looking at an Arsenal team that you'd expect to get 2 or 3 goals against this Spurs defence. And you wouldn't expect Spurs to be able to get 2 goals against the Arsenal defence. So, yeah, I'd expect maybe not 3 from Arsenal, but a sort of 2-1, 2-0 with a pretty strong defensive performance and a lot of involvement from those midfield players just moving that ball around and looking to create the space. So won't be an easy watch for us as fans. I think it will be a tight one. And I think
it's going to be a lot of stress, isn't it? I do think this game and Old Trafford away are really intense. I'm quite nervous about the Spurs one, but I've spoken to a couple of Tottenham fans. Sorry, go on.
I was just going to say I heard Baker say that Spurs are the top goal scorers in the 45 to 60th minute mark or 62nd minute mark. They scored 17 goals in like the 15 minutes after half time. So Ange clearly is great at changing the system and exploiting what he sees in that first half. So, yeah, I think that will be the difficult part for us is that post-half-time stage.
Yeah, I think the second half, they've scored double the number of goals in the second half as they have in the first half, I think. So it makes sense. Just some team news. Olise is not starting. Man United is unchanged. And yeah, we said Diaz is not in the squad. His partner gave birth. So looks like Jordan Ayew is starting. Sorry. And that is the alarm telling me to buy Bruno Fernandes and Isaac in my Sky team with 2 of my last remaining 4 or 5 transfers for the remainder of the season.
I'll just stop everyone from panicking. When Nima said Diaz does not start, he didn't mean the real Diaz. Ben Brereton does start for
No, your Diaz starts, right? You're captain for the game we start.
Unfortunately, I also own Elise, so that's not ideal seeing Ayew starting.
So it looks like you'll be waiting for Elise to sub on. I'll be waiting for Mateus Cunha to sub on. All of us in the chat, including Evo, we're all waiting for goals off the bench for our respective differentials. I hope we're all successful this week. Just before we go to Chelsea Spurs, which is the main double fixture, I want to say 1 or 2 things about Arsenal Tottenham, and then we'll move on in the interest of time. We only have 40 minutes till the games kick off. So, okay, cool. So one thing I saw Trossard say in the interview after the match, and I think this tells you like the way that the Arsenal team think about clean sheets and defense. We saw there was that game where like Trossard was screaming, like as does Gabriel when they make a defensive movement, and like our attackers celebrate defensive actions and clean sheets the same way as our defenders. Is very much a team thing. Everyone fills in, and some opponents have said that like the speed at which people run back into position when we get counter pressed and lose the ball, it's just disgusting. Like they're all there playing for each other, and like when you see the end of the game, Raya went and like hugged both Gabriel Saliba arms around both and pulled them in. Like clean sheets are the bread and butter of this team, is what I'm trying to say, right? And historically, in more recent years, we always thought about Arsenal as a really poor defense, especially away from home, a team that would concede and played attractive football, but was a glass cannon in some ways. You could say maybe similar to Tottenham this year, where they scored a lot of goals, but they would always concede. Now, Trossard in this interview, he basically said, like, yeah, like our number 1 goal is clean sheet, because we know if we get clean sheet, then if we score 1 goal, we probably win. Obviously, we want to score more goals. Like today was great because we scored 5, but our only goal is clean sheet because we know if we get clean sheet, 1 goal and we win. So that mentality is coming all the way from Trossard on the wing, all the way back through the spine of this team. And I think that is something that can't be underestimated.
And I think just before we jump on, I think one thing that I can see here, and yes, it is the Arsenal Bite Size Show. Calm, welcome to it. But if you just look at those NetxG charts down there, Crystal Palace have the lowest with 0.97. Next lowest is Spurs with 1.15. They are the second lowest XG this game week.
Yeah, 1. Oh, sorry. When I said the 1.74 for Spurs, that was against Chelsea earlier. Yeah. Sorry, it says 2.07 to Arsenal, 1.15 against Spurs versus Arsenal. I read out Spurs next year versus Chelsea that was like 2 goals. That's a whole different team. Okay, no, I see. Okay, so I was thinking 2-2. Like the NetxG is a bit brave here. Like, what has it seen in Arsenal's defense away from home from 6 consecutive clean sheets to be giving these kind of numbers? The NetxG looks at the last 6. Away games.
The shot-based goal predictor has a 37% chance of 0 for Spurs.
0 goals. Okay, wow.
Which is the highest this game week.
So the chance of the Spurs, well, yeah, that is the highest chance of anyone getting 0 goals this week. Damn, you're right.
So you start with Gabriel over
26%. Oh, I see what you mean. Yeah, like I'm currently starting Gabriel. I'm just looking at my team. The team that had Dallo and like these guys in it, and Shah and all these guys, the back line is Gabriel, Shah, and Gusto, but I don't think Gusto is going to be there much longer. Guess we'll find out. Poro is someone I would start
before we get any more complaints from the
let's move
live watchers.
So we're gonna stop the Arsenal Bite Size Show now. You can go to the other channel to watch that, and we're gonna go to the last game of the game week, which is is there one more still? Yeah, sorry, there's 2 more. Nottingham Forest versus Man City. So Nottingham Forest is 1.33 net XG to Man City's 1.63. What are your thoughts here? Because I kind of feel like I need to be tripled up on City going into this, especially with the double coming, and the fixture schedule was quite kind to them after this weekend. Like it's going to be quite straightforward bar the cup final at the end of the season. So are you going to have triple City on this wild card?
Yeah, I'll be going triple City, and it becomes a question of which triple. And I think if I'm looking at this game, I probably don't agree with the NetxG here because this is the end of the season. Like the NetxG makes sense, but I think we're now looking at a Manchester City knocked out of Europe at the end game stage of the season, and I think they're just going to go through and win every single game they need to, as we were saying earlier. And I think this is the kind of game where, if he's fit, I expect Haaland to absolutely bully Forest. They are, again, one of the worst teams at conceding headers, at goals from set pieces. They're just not a great team whatsoever from that aspect. So, yeah, I'm looking at tripling up on City. I'm going Haaland, KDB, and probably Gvardiol, and having that defence in there. But questions over whether it'll be him or someone else. Because, again,
no Edison. No Edison. So, that's the difficulty for me. It's kind of like I've been seeing people talking about Edison, and I'm like, surely Gvardiol. Like I know Aki's there as well, but like, surely you got to go for the upside of Gvardiol for Edison. And
if City have won the title going into 38, there's no way Edison plays, right? But there is a way that
he'll be preparing for the cup final, right? Because Edison will play that cup final. No, not Edison. Sorry, Ortega will play that cup final.
And you'll probably let him have that last game where it doesn't really matter to get some live shots into your gloves rather than just training. So yeah, no, it's an interesting one. I don't hate Edison because people will want 3 City, and I don't hate people on a wild card going 2 City at the moment and holding 1 spot open. And who knows what happens with Haaland as well. Like if I get news that he's in, I'm not happy with this press information from Pep, because I'm pretty sure last time he said, "Oh, it's just a minor thing, no concern. Haaland was out for 3 months."
That is very true. Last time he said that, it's almost like, yeah, I don't know. It's weird, isn't it? Like you can start to see like City are pretty flawless, but you're seeing some chinks in their armor. Like that press conference he gave, I appreciate Arteta backed him and Bernardo Silva towed the company line in a presser, and to be fair, player welfare and the congested schedules are like really bad, and there's been more injuries this season than we've ever seen in like the Premier League season. But Pep essentially said, like, look, like we played on Wednesday in the Champions League. Why are we now having to play our cup game on Saturday? This is crazy. And to me, that seemed like a bit of a chink in the armor there. It was almost like,
I'd agree.
yeah, it's almost like, why would he? Like, I know he's talking about player welfare, but you know, Arteta didn't say anything, and he played away from home on Wednesday, and Pep played at the Etihad, and then he also played on Saturday, and then he had to play on Tuesday, whereas Pep doesn't play till Thursday. So part of me is like, what's going on? Like, is this Haaland thing worse? Is he bitter because he's injured for real? Like,
There's
what's going
concern.
on?
What I have never heard. Well, I cannot believe for a second that Haaland. You have to be struggling to walk to be asked to be subbed off during a Champions League quarter-final against Real Madrid when the game's still in the balance. Why are you asking to be subbed off in the 60-odd minute? It's just
and then it's minor, apparently.
It can't be, can it? Like he's
not made a match day squad since, right?
So is there a world where if you're on a wildcard and you don't have information? Look, I think there's a lot of value, and I saw FPL Harry was talking through it on Deadline Dilemmas and saying he'll probably still have Haaland because with your lineup you've got 8 good attackers anyway, so you can bench him this week. And
like, I'd be having to bench like someone like Foden right now. So it's
not the end of the world, right? If you get news that Haaland say like, oh cool, I start Foden, right? It's good in a weird way. But if he then is ruled out long term, you've tied up 14 and a bit million into a striker that's not playing, into a City asset. You're not really going to want to move to Alvarez because he's not exactly been great when Haaland's been out. Foden's been controlling all of it. So you're probably then looking at that Foden KDB double up. So you're not only looking at one transfer to get off of Haaland, you're looking at another one being used to move off of it. And no one wants to be using transfers ahead of game week 37. You want to be going into that with 2 transfers for your bench boost.
That's what I was thinking. Yeah, well, I'm questioning that though. So part of me was wondering, a world in which, let's say, I used 1 free transfer in 36. So let's say I went for like a second Spurs mid this week, and then I sold them in 36, and then I would want to maybe roll in 37 to have 2 free transfers to attack 38, which is obviously not a concern for you because you can just free hit to the perfect team in 38. Whereas for me, having 2 free transfers in 38 is probably that would be more powerful for me. Yeah. So it's kind of like, I know injuries can come up, things can change very quickly, and I might then be like, why have I pre-planned this transfer? But part of me wonders, like, could I hold off buying a player till later? Like, could I go in with someone more appealing for the next 2 and then buy a third City player later? Like, wait to see, is the title race still on, or have they already won? Like, almost like don't commit who that third City player is yet.
Particularly if we get no news on Haaland, you just keep that Haaland money to the side and have that so that if you get that news that Haaland's fine, cool, back in you come for 37 or 36. But otherwise, cool. And let's be honest as well, if the title race is still on and you get news that Haaland is playing in 37, you'll take a -4 for him anyway in 37 to have Haaland double. Like, you wouldn't even hesitate there. So that's one of the most justifiable reasons to take a -4. Erling Haaland is confirmed playing in the double. So, yeah, there's a world where maybe I go without him to start, but it's not really a necessary one because it's really only, I just want him to be fine by 36 ultimately. So it'll be interesting to see. But I guess going back to this game, I think quite a comfortable City win. Wouldn't surprise me if it was sort of 2-0, 3-0. They do still have defensive frailties where they switch their eye off the ball for a while. But at the same time, Nottingham Forest aren't exactly the highest goal scorers in the league. So, yeah, it'll be an interesting one.
No, that's fair. All right, cool. All right, let's keep going to the last game then. So the last game, the double fixture, Chelsea versus Spurs, 1.97 NetxG for Chelsea at home, 1.74 for Spurs. How do we see this game playing out? This is the 2-2. This is the high-scoring game of the week, supposedly. Both teams do seem to concede goals. Chelsea are very much Jekyll and Hyde. I think Palmer's fitness is going to be the main factor of what I think about Chelsea going into the double game week. But with Nkunku kind of flirting with being back, with Porro flirting with being back, Richarlison both teams should have enough firepower. Is there anything in this matchup that would lean towards a Son captaincy? Because right now I'm kind of between Palmer and Son, and the only reason I'm not on Son, and it's maybe a bad one, is I just believe so much in the Arsenal defense away from home. But does this
I think
fixture
that's
then?
enough reason.
Is that enough reason to avoid a Spurs captaincy, you reckon?
But like, if you're looking at this, Chelsea are expected to score more than Spurs, like by like a quarter of a goal, right? So
in both games, you could say, because even in the other game, they're expected 1.6 to Spurs 1.15.
So there we are. You're looking at a half goal difference between it there. And then if you look at the matchups as well for it, like Chelsea's central zonal attacking at 4.3, which reads good for Palmer and him moving into those spaces, even 3.9 either side. And then we've already as we've discussed, Spurs defensive injuries, no doggy, questions over Porro, playing 2 games in a short turnaround when they've had a couple of weeks off, but now all of a sudden players aren't being seen in training. Plus, Spurs will undoubtedly change their formation up between the 2 games. You know, whether it's a Kulu gets a start one, Brennan gets another, Timo gets one, Richie gets another, just don't know. And I guess the other concerning thing, and I hadn't realised it at the time, but in the last game, Son came off really early for Son.
Yeah, let me have a look.
Game. It was in the...
Was it like 60th minute or something?
58th.
58. And was it already 4-0 at that stage?
It was 3-0 at that time.
3-0, okay.
So the game is still done, but
yeah, that's
at that point,
great.
He comes off, and alongside Bentancur and Basuma, and Maddison, Werner, and Johnson all stay on. Now, Maddison comes off about 5-10 minutes later, but why did Son come off?
Yeah, that is a strange. I have noticed, like, maybe not recently, like obviously with the Richarlison injury, he's been getting a lot closer to 90 minutes every game. But at the start of the season, there was a lot of early subs for Son. If you remember, like I'm just looking here, like game week 1, 74th minute, game week 4, 71st minute, 79th minute, game week 5, 78th minute against Arsenal, game week 6, 68th minute, Liverpool, game week 7. So there's like a period of like game week 4 to game week 9 where he barely got past 80 minutes in any game.
So there's those concerns there with him. Like I can't captain him, mainly because he plays.
I'm not going to put anyone off owning him. Like, obviously, I think he's a fantastic own. But yeah, I see what you're saying. Like, it is tough. Like, from the double, I want to be getting 150 minutes.
And also these numbers and the fact that Spurs do now have Kulusevski, Richarlison, Werner, Brennan all play in the wide positions. I don't get the second Spurs attacker in these 2 fixtures in particular. I could see it in the Chelsea one, because again, I could see a 2-2 or a 3-2 either way. But I wouldn't back the one who starts against Arsenal to be the one who starts against Chelsea. And I wouldn't be able to tell you which one of those starts each of those games. And I know I shared it with you because I found it quite funny. But if you look at cumulative underperformance of XG, Brennan Johnson ranks 12th in all of Europe in terms of the worst.
So as in, like, I guess he's expected to have scored that many more goals than he has, right?
But it also is, look, that's one of the most leading stats in there, because there'll be certain players in there that have played 1 game, etc. Whereas Brennan Johnson, by playing more, if it's a cumulative one, will have more cumulative than others. Per 90, it's not that bad. Genuinely, it's just sort of marginal, but it just cumulative adds up quite significantly. What you'll like to hear is Aubameyang is, like, I think in 7th. So good to see him there.
Well, fair play to him, though. I think he's got 25 league goals, so he's definitely doing better than Brennan Johnson,
but that's
despite the underperformance.
So I guess it comes down to, like, I'm looking at it, again, it comes back to what we were saying at the start. Spurs and Chelsea are the ones that double this game week. And logic says if you're wildcarding and you have 2 teams that double this week and double in 37, you should have 6 of their players. But yeah, I think I'm somewhere between 4 and 5. I'm probably leaning more towards 4 than I am 5.
Yeah, so I think I'm in a situation where, like, I currently have... I have like 4. I have a triple Chelsea, 2 attack, 1 defensive, whether that's going to be a defender or a goalkeeper, I don't know. And then Son. I haven't even like begun to explore the concept of like maybe I put Vicario in goal. Like
Which is
maybe
a good concept. Like I'm not against that, for example. Like I'm okay with the Vicario in goal. Because he's a better. If it was between Vicario and Petrovic, Vicario is a much better goalkeeper, just in general. But I think that's why.
if you were only going to pick one of them, but I guess my thing is like, would I prefer if Porro is fit, right? Like Porro and Petrovic versus Vicario and Gusto Di Sassi. Like I think I actually prefer the Porro and Petrovic just because of Porro.
Right, but you're saying that, and you're saying if Porro is fit, will he be fit enough to start 2 games in a row, then another game, then 2 games in a row?
Maybe not. Maybe.
So is that is I'm genuinely like.
So then, if we're talking about Van der Ven and Petrovic, then maybe maybe.
How exciting is that? Like Mickey Van der Ven, who might get a header. The one that is genuinely, he is of interest. Ben Davis is of more interest to me than Van der Ven is at the moment, because Ben Davis is unreal in the air. He's like fantastic. And he'll be more attacking than Van der Ven just in general. So if I get
Why don't we go to your wild card? Why don't we go to your wild card? I haven't gone the wrong way. But yeah, we're seeing as we're on it now anyway. We're kind of talking about these players. I feel like we've kind of summarized the matchups, how we see those fixtures going. I'll just quickly read it out for the podcast listeners. So at the moment, obviously this could change quite a lot. You have Raya in goal with Onana. You have Guardiol, Gusto, Gabriel, Van der Ven, and Neco Williams. You have De Bruyne, Son, Palmer, Gordon, Bruno Fernandes, Haaland, Isaac, Jackson. Do you have any plans for bench boost in 37 as well, or you've already used it?
Yeah, so mine was the misclick when I was on
the accidental. Oh no.
Yeah, so that was always the plan though. The plan was wildcard 35, bench boost 37, free hit 38. That was my entire season plan. Because that's gone out the window, that's why my team's going to look different to other wildcard drafts. So I think the front 8 are the front 8, and I think you'll see variations of that with Foden moving in for someone in a lot of others, or a Brenner moving in for someone. So I don't think there's too much to be said about how that appears. I think where I differ is the fact that I've got that double Arsenal defence. And that is me attacking game week 36, because that game against Bournemouth, and if I look at the other teams and players, I don't think many people on wildcard are going to have that double up in defence there. And that's also why Neco Williams comes into it. Unsurprisingly, in fact, let me ask you, who do you think Neco Williams plays in game week 36?
Sheffield United.
There we are. So wing back.
That was a pure guess. That was a pure guess, by the way.
And that's exactly why he's in. It's a wing back against Sheffield United, not for the clean sheets, but for exploiting those wide spaces.
He's another one who I've had in my team now. Do you remind me? All these cheap. Or I was going to say mixed shit and cheap into sheep. All these sheep midfield sheep players. Oh man. No, I think I really like this wild card. I think you're right. So I do have a bench boost. I'm trying to see what looks the most different for me right now to you. So for me, the biggest difference is there's a world in which I go for double Newcastle defense and don't get Gordon. So I still have Dubravka, who I paid 3.9 million for. He's 4.2, so I've not sold him because of the value tied up. I really want Trippier, but if he's not fit, and it's looking more likely than not that he won't be for this week at least, then maybe a Dubravka plus Shaw might be something I prefer than like Shaw and Burn. Because if I'm not going to have Gordon, because I'm actually considering a double Spurs midfield, I'm basically considering the plan I told you.
Yeah.
So like double Spurs midfield, play them in this double, sell them in 36 for a City mid, and then bench boost in 37 with the City third player and just get rid of the third Spurs player.
Would you really not want Gordon this week though? Surely it's...
So this is the week I would want him, and I think in this 1 week alone, he could do enough damage single-handedly against Sheffield United that even if he blanks the rest of the season in the tough away games or whatever, like I'll still be rock bottom by not having had him this week. So there is that. But who are you benching in this week?
Hopefully Haaland, right?
Hopefully you're like, oh, he's still injured. We'll just bench him, roll out the other seven.
Like I played with it a couple of times, and I think it probably... Let me actually look at what I've got it set as now, because that's going to tell you exactly where my mind last was. And I'll tell you what else is quite interesting about my strategy, and now no longer having the bench boost in play, is it means I have 2 free transfers between 36 and 37, right? Because I'm free hitting the 38. So in
you
Gameweek
can't roll anyway in 37, yeah.
In either one of them, I can't. So in 36, what I'm going to do is I'm going to remove, I think it's Gordon, and bring in Saka or Havertz for that Bournemouth game. And then in 37, take them back out and reverse it. Or go to someone else if I like that double. So it's going to be an in and out with an Arsenal midfielder for that Game Week 36 fixture. Cool.
I like the hokey cokey. I'm a big fan of the hokey cokey.
Well, you can do it if you've got that wild card, and then just 3 weeks is all my wild card has to work for. So mine's just attacking 35, 37, and then having those 3 players in Arsenal and Neco for 36 as well, and then bringing in Saka for that additional one. Look, realistically, if I were to look at it, I think I'm probably, I don't know who I'd bench. Probably Bruno. Off of what we've seen today on the NetxG maps, I'm probably benching Bruno out of those if Haaland starts.
I can't though. I can't. I just can't. So I currently had Garnacho in my team, even though I'll be able to afford Bruno once I sell Salah. I had Garnacho for budget reasons. So what I've done is I've kept the players I've got value in, like the likes of Saka, Gabriel, Dubravka, Haaland, Foden. So all the players I have money in, Salah, I've kept them because I don't want to sell them in case I change my mind, and I do want to keep them in the end. So far, when I do Salah to Son, that could fund Garnacho to Bruno. So that's where that money would come from. But with it right now, I've got Garnacho and Dalot on the bench this week. And I'm playing like Foden and Haaland. But it just feels like if I can't play my United mid that costs 8 million at home to Burnley, am I keeping an 8 million player on my team purely for the bench boost? Like, why do I even have him at all, right? Like, why not just have Havertz? Why not just have Odegaard? Like why have Bruno at all, right? Like,
but if we went through that, like, so Gordon against Sheffield United, you're not benching him.
No.
And then if you say you're not benching any of your doublers,
yep,
then that means you're either benching KDB or Haaland. That's all that's left there.
Or yeah, you're not benching Isaac or Gordon. You're not benching Palmer or Jack. Yes, Son.
So to that point, it's one of those where if you're going between those, yeah, I might bench KDB and start Bruno. But I genuinely think KDB plays every single game now until the title's won. And KDB is just, for me, Foden is still good with KDB on the pitch, but he's not as chaotic. He's not going to punish me as much. So
what's Grealish's situation? Because it does feel that when Doku starts, it's kind of like, it does feel like everything goes through kind of Doku's trying to deliver to kind of Haaland and on the other side from the left to the right of the box. But when Grealish plays, I feel like Grealish and KDB are much better for like Haaland. Whereas when it's Doku, I'm not sure. I don't know, like he's great, but I feel like he's great against certain opponents.
Yeah.
So like what do you think about that? Like, because I know you're saying you think KDB starts every game, but do you think that if you knew, like, let's say that Doku started every game till the end or Grealish started every game to the end, is there a preference you would have as to which one would lead to Foden versus De Bruyne? Like, do you feel that one is better for De Bruyne and one is better for Foden? Because I personally think that Doku playing, for me, it kind of limits the appeal a bit of like Haaland slightly. It also limits the appeal of Foden a bit for me as well. But I don't know if I'm just...
I think, yes, with Doku, look, Doku is a guy, chaotic winger, isn't he? He's someone who just takes players on. And they're a rare breed, and typically Pep takes that out of them. We saw what he did with Grealish when he signed him from Villa. Stop taking players on, start playing more of a defensive winger type of role. Possession is more important than getting past the player. But he still enjoys that raw talent of Doku, and I think that can lead to him causing chaos and the ball dropping to Foden's and De Bruyne's, not through purpose but through accident. I like all of it. Like, genuinely, I think at this point, I like Foden, I like De Bruyne, I like Haaland. Like, just the key men for City, I expect to be key men for City as they look to close out the 4th title in a row. I played around with it, and I think the one glaring thing I'm missing in my team is that 3rd Newcastle spot. And it's that defensive one. And the main reason why is because, as you said, I don't mind Shah, but I don't like Dubravka, and I definitely don't like Dan Burn. And whilst I think Dan Burn is fine for the clean sheets that Newcastle get, I also think he tends to be the lowest scoring defender when Newcastle get a clean sheet. That you just have that envy of going, oh, great, I got a clean sheet, while Shaw got 9, whilst Dubravka got 8, etc. And I just can't do that, so I'd rather avoid it. There's a world where if I move De Bruyne out to Foden, I have money to change get a Shaw in, etc. So of course there'll be multiple variations on it. But yeah, to your point, I think those City attackers are just really tough positions. And there's possibly a world where I just take Gavardio out of my team for now and maybe bring in maybe a Kyle Walker and go with someone a little bit.
I was going to ask you about that because Kyle Walker, obviously, he's been steadily playing most of the minutes this season pre the injury. He could also be someone who is quite nice to own. But yeah, I think he's going to be starting right back for England, right, at the Euros. So he's definitely going to want to get match fit and be ready for the cup final.
Yeah. But anyway,
cool. Let's keep going because we've got some questions in the chat. I've started. We've got about 10 questions we're going to go through quickly before the game kicks off in just under 10 minutes. Before that, a few thank yous to everyone. So all of our super haulers on YouTube at FPL Robbie, Greenback Golf, Harbour Boy, David Harrison, FPL Discomfort, which is of course Kieran, who is guest hosting with us today. True Fandela, thank you all for your support. Our haulers, Dread FPL Podner, Kevin Rose, C Hunt, Blonde, S Scotters M, FPL Teacher, Doni FPL, Tom Gorsuch, Davindra Raj, Lindsay, FPL DG Boy, Akshay, Dom, Claire, Tursks, Catherine, Harry Not Kane, Sebastian Koo, Neil, Benjamin Lockwood, FPL Rubber Ducky, Big Mike, General Zod, FPL Planner, Mark Bond, FPL Eric, Grady, Parag, Jasker and Singh, BW Splitter, the FPL Juice Show. Thank you everyone for your support. And last but not least, our Patreons, Lucy and Gann, Elron, FPL California, Mike Burke, Gunk, Dr. Green Farm, Michael Rodriguez, and Daddybot. Thank you all so much for all your support. If you've enjoyed the show today, please do hit that like button and subscribe if you're new around here. But other than that, I am going to very quickly go to the Q&A and we'll get us out of here. So we'll do quick fire answers, Kieran, and then we're going to just kind of get everyone out in time for the matches. So I'm going to start with the Discord questions and then the ones from the live chat. There's only 2 from Discord, so bear with me. So Harbour Boy asks, predicting minutes can be the biggest challenge at this time of the season. Which FPL relevant players are likely to be the safest minutes-wise, barring injury? A bit like Harry Kane from previous seasons. So who's going to play 90 every week from now to the end of the season? I think it's Ollie Watkins, who we were talking about earlier. Maybe Bruno Fernandes as well. William Saliba's playing every minute.
Yeah, I think that's it. I think Ollie Watkins maybe, but if they got to the Europa League final, could you see him bench for a Duran if they've already tied up Champions League? And again, it's worth looking at those Spurs fixtures and looking at how far ahead Villa are as it stands right now. You know, they are 6 points ahead, have played 2 more games than Spurs, but the run-in is very tough for Spurs. So yeah, it's an interesting one because I am looking at quite a lot of players now, and it becomes tough to say who's nailed. Ultimately, I think if the title race is still in contention, then the best players from the teams fighting for it are still going to be there. I think Saka's still going to start every game. Odegaard would start every game. Saliba for Arsenal, Ben White, etc. And probably Kai Havertz as well, whether it's up top or in the middle. I think from City, you probably expect Foden and KDB to start every game if they're fit, and probably their best defence to start every game. And the same for Liverpool as well right now. So I think from those teams, you can bank on it. And then I think if you just look at teams like Everton, they're not exciting, but Sean Dyche doesn't change a lot around apart from whether it's Besso or Dominic Calvert-Lewin. So I think, you know, if you wanted nailed players like Mikalenko, like Tarkovsky will be nailed. Dominic Solanke's got a good end of the fixture and he will be a 90-minute man every game. So yeah, depends on what's on the line, basically.
Yeah, I think from the double game weekers for me, like it would have to be Bruno Fernandes. Like he's the one I go for because he could also be my way out in 38 to a Saka or a Salah. He would be the exit route in 38 for me. So that's the way I'm looking at it. But we'll keep going. Dom Black Dragon. If you're on Wildcard, which are the best Spurs and Chelsea defenders for the next 4 game weeks? So I think if Porro's fit, if he's not, I think Vicario. You think Davies is a good shout, depending on the fullback fitness. Obviously, Udoghi's out for the season. Chelsea defenders, Petrovic or Gusto or bust.
Yeah, it's in order. Gusto, Petrovic. Yeah, that's it.
Yeah, I think that's it. So let's keep going though, because these are quick fire now. So Sebastian Koo, I'm on Wildcard 35. Arsenal defender or Chelsea defender? Arsenal
Oh,
defender for me. With the Gusto injury out and seeing the performance from Chelsea, I'm really reluctant to get in a Chelsea defender in my wildcard team. Maybe keeping Gabriel's better. Yep, we agree. Watkins or Jackson in wildcard team? Watkins chasing Golden Boot. Villa have something to play for. Jackson is a truly worse striker.
yeah, it's fair points. I don't hate the idea of going Watkins. I genuinely don't. Like, I'm looking at my team and he enters. He was the one coming into my team if Jackson had got that 10th yellow card. He was the one in the drafts that I'd replaced Jackson with. So I have him close to Jackson, and I was kind of hoping Jackson would get booked. So I'd be fine going Watkins. I think it's just that extra 2 games for Jackson, but probably Watkins in reality.
I'm currently on wildcard with Jackson, so I do think Watkins is the right shout, but I'm a double game week addict. So I
We're
can't.
chasing the upside, aren't we?
Yeah, I can't tell you Watkins while I have Jackson in good faith. But it's funny because when you ask about someone else's team, I say that the best option is Watkins. Whereas for my own team, I'm not going to take that advice. I'm going to go for Jackson.
I think the interesting one is it's because doubles are so hard to judge things just in general, right? Like we saw Palace smashed it in their first one. They could not score any goals in this game week, and people will struggle to remember that. Arsenal, Kai Havertz did nothing in the first game, and then he smashed it in the second. So there can be so many swings. So I think that's part of the reason we're going Nicholas Jackson, because he could be absolute garbage in the first game and then get a goal and assist and 2 bonus in the second in both of those.
It wasn't even looking that great for Havertz when the first half ended, right? He was missing the chances. He had a few opportunities. You were starting to think, oh no, is it going to not be his day? And then bang. So it's I just need those minutes to have the chance. I want to roll the dice twice.
And Jackson will have the chances. Whether or not
he will have the chances, yeah. He would definitely have the chances. Just we don't know what he'll do with them. So on to the live chat questions. We have 5 minutes till kickoff, so we'll keep going really quickly now. So just rapid yes and no's now. Andrew Dale asks, triple captain Isaac or Gordon this week?
No.
Not for me. Not for me. I'm sorry, buddy.
Not a triple. I'm fine with captain in it.
Captain is cool. Yeah, captain is cool.
But if you're looking to use your triple captain this week, you do have to play it safe and go Palmer if it's your only week's triple captain.
I think so too. Yep. BW Splitter. I want to bring Gordon in on a -4 this week so bad, maybe even part of a -8 if fit. I think this is the fixture. If you can get through this week without him, I'd go without him.
That doesn't say if fit. That says because.
Oh, because fuck it. Yeah. Okay, I see. We're so far into the episode that I don't think YouTube's gonna punish us too badly for that one.
But yeah,
I'll take a -4 this week happily if you don't have wildcard.
Wide players against Sheffield United is a good opportunity to take a -4.
All right, the quickfire is buffering. Quickfire now, quickfire. So let's see. I'm going to remove some of the stuff that I was going to mention before because they were just statements and not questions. And because we're running out of time, I shouldn't go to the questions. So here's a statement actually, but I think it's worth discussing because it's about the Man City players. I think this will be our last topic and then we'll get out of here. So C Hunt is looking at Foden, Guardiola, Salah with a City slot open and then could get either KDB or Haaland depending on fitness. They were considering genuinely no Haaland and, if you want to introduce some risk, but it could pay off. What do you think about that? I don't mind that. If we knew Haaland, if we felt that Haaland wasn't going to be there this weekend, could you just get neither Haaland or KDB and then just pick one of the two? So you kind of have you have your Foden, you have your Guardiola, and then you bring in one of KDB or Haaland.
And particularly with the fact that looking at what he's put there, he's got Salah in that team as well instead.
Yeah.
Salah in 36 is the best captaincy choice.
I think he is. Yeah.
But that is where the pain happens for the Wildcard 35ers of we've just seen the stats from Gabe of how good this fixture is for them. Then we're saying 36 he's the best captaincy option, and both of us are going, I won't own him, but he'll be good, isn't it? It's just he doesn't have a double, so I can't have him. It's Mo Salah fighting for the title going into the final 4 games of the season with good fixtures. And it might be,
you don't know if he'll be there next year. Like him and Van Dijk might not even be there next year.
Yeah, exactly. Klopp won't be there next year. So there's
that's
so much on the line. And you look at that and just they've only got 2 home games left as well.
So if you were told Haaland is definitely out this game with 35 pre-weekend, would you prefer to bench him or to spend that money on Salah?
I'd spend it. So I actually made a draft of that with no Haaland, basically, just on that news. And the way it switches is, I end up having... Oh, no different. That can't be the right one. I ended up having Salah in for 2 weeks.
Yeah, I think I might... That tempts me, man. All right, I'm
now,
gonna
it
keep
means
a
I
lookout.
go without Bruno. That situation, I get rid of Bruno because I still keep KDB. And I actually bring Foden in as well. So I've got KDB,
I see.
Bruno, Foden.
Okay, damn.
With Son and Palmer as well. So it becomes
like
really
that.
messy. But yeah, I'm
going to keep a lookout for your tweets on X so people can find you on @FPL_Discomfort to keep an eye on how your wildcard will evolve. I'm praying somehow a Sheffield United player still makes it in, but I don't have much hopes for that one. Thank you for joining me, Kieran. It's been a great 2 hours with you. The game kicks off in 3 minutes, so we'll let everyone get to that. I hope Ben Brereton Diaz does you proud. I hope Mateus Cunha gets a goal off the bench. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in the chat. We love you all, and thank you so much for your support. Next week, we're hoping the show will be live for the Gameweek 36 matchup show on Thursday. Hopefully, Gabe will be hosting with Craig next week, and then I'll be back for 37 with Gabe, and then we're hoping for a little surprise in 38 where maybe we can have all 4 of us from the recent shows in one episode to see off the season. But until then, may your arrows be green, everyone. It's been a pleasure. Thank you for tuning in, and see you all next time. Cheers, guys.